My name is Lisa Sharrard Jones. I'm the former state anti-piping coordinator here in South Carolina and my licensed producer to sell insurance in South Carolina. Policyholders were impacted in the fact that they had never experienced flood before. They never thought they were going to need this flood policy. Some of them were underinsured, some of them were uninsured, where they had paid their mortgage off and dropped the policy. And some of them had full coverage, even though they resented having to have that policy in place. They did have a flood insurance policy because it was mandated by the mortgage company. And they said, well, since I'm having to buy building coverage, I'll go ahead and get the contents coverage too. But it was quite expensive, and they tried every which way to get out of it. And fortunately, you know, the week after the flood, I had one of my clients say to me, "Thank God you could not get me out of buying flood insurance." Right. The first thing you tell someone that they have to purchase a flood insurance policy, they immediately said, you know, I've talked to everybody in the neighborhood. I've lived in Columbia my whole life. It has never flooded here. I wish I had a penny for every time I've heard that in the 28-year career I've had. But it does flood in special flood hazard areas. It may not flood in your lifetime, but it is a risk, and you need to understand the risk. And the people who live here in this community never thought that they would see an area where you would have, even in the course of 24, 48 hours, where you would have anywhere between 16 and 25 inches of rain.
Right.
And the streams here just don't have the capacity to handle that. We know the other part of the problem is explaining to people that when they get out of the flood hazard area, either through a letter of map amendment, letter of map revision, that they still need to have flood insurance because a third of the claims come from areas just outside the special flood hazard area. And so those people who I had worked with to get letters of map amendment did have a flood insurance policy. They had purchased a preferred risk policy. You know, interestingly enough, I'm working with a lot of real estate agents that are bringing me in on the beginning of the transaction before the deal is put in cement. And so we're discussing the flood risk, and we're looking at the maps, and we're talking about the flood hazard, and we're talking about the need for flood insurance. We're not only looking at the current maps, we're also looking at future maps, the preliminary maps that are coming out. And so we're looking at both the current risk and the predicted risk, you know, on the preliminary maps. And so we're discussing the risk up front. We're talking about the need for flood insurance. We're talking about, is there something they can do to that structure that can lower the flood insurance premiums? In other words, if they installed vents, or if they elevated the HVAC, or if they unfinished that room, those are all things that would benefit them in making the flood insurance cheaper. The homeowner who's buying the house is becoming very informed, and they're getting very comfortable. And I'm able to save a lot of real estate transactions from going south because immediately they hear when this, you know, hear, oh, there's a flood insurance policy, they oh, I don't know about that, you know, and then when we start talking about the flood risk and what the policy cost is, and if there's anything they could do to lower the premium, we're really coming into becoming a very educated buying community now. It used to be that people wanted to know what school district, that was the deciding factor for people who wanted to buy a house. Now the number one question is how much is the flood insurance? When you look at a community that's devastated as this community was, across the board, as broadly as it was, when you have 25 inches of rain, between 16 and 25 inches of rain, you're looking at a wide band of an area that's affected. You look at the tax base. If those homes were worth, you know, $100,000, or just the house itself, not including the land, and now that house is worth nothing, they're not paying taxes on that. So when you look at the impact to the community on a tax basis and being able to fund their projects and being able to fund the activities in the community and just the operation of government services, that has a broad effect. So having flood insurance in a community helps preserve and sustain that community as the people recover. Because people who have flood insurance, in the event of a flood and they have to use that flood insurance, are going to start rebuilding within 6 months. And if people who have flood insurance, they're driven to get life back to normal. They need to have that, restore that normalcy to their lifestyle and to their neighborhoods.